What up guys, RapTech here again. Welcome to the weapon guide series where we go in depth with the stats as well as some of the attachments and talk about some of the best loadouts for every single weapon for both PvP and PvE in Shatterline. And as always, make sure to sub if you want to learn about this game's inner details. Now, today we're going to be talking about the PvE's most used weapon since you start with it in expedition mode. The tier 1 sidearm G5 Earl, also known as the Glock. So let's get into it. So just like last time, let's start off by looking at this weapon's rate of fire, which for the Glock is 267 rounds per minute, which is good compared with the other sidearms. Matter of fact, it's the second fastest RPM in this category. Now, as far as damage goes, this is going to work a little bit differently. Last video I was requested to address the exact ranges where damage drops off for each weapon, and that's exactly what I'm going to do from now on. So starting off with close quarters damage for the G5 Earl. At the range of between 0 to 12 meters, we're looking at 3 shots to the body to kill, giving it a TTK of 450 milliseconds. As for headshots, the close quarters range goes from 0 meters to 20 meters, taking only 2 shots to the head to kill, giving it a TTK of 225 milliseconds. Then we've got longer ranges for the Glock. From 13 meters or more, we need 4 shots to the body to kill. Now when I say 13 meters or more, I mean you can literally be 100 plus meters away and it'll still be the same damage. Now, at this range, we're looking at a TTK of 674 milliseconds. And as for a headshot, from 21 meters or more, we're looking at 3 shots to the head to kill, which gives us a TTK of 450 milliseconds at long range if you hit all headshots. Up next, let's look at the initial hipfire spread of this weapon. And as you can see here, the G5 Earl actually has the best hipfire spread out of all the sidearms, making hipfires with it not a bad choice at all at close ranges. Now on to recoil. For the Glock, the recoil pretty much kicks in a straight upwards line, which is really good for us because this also means that it is very easy to control. To do so, we just have to slowly pull our aim down as we're shooting, making it very accurate. Now as for handling of this weapon, starting off for the aim down sight time, we're looking at 100 milliseconds, which is extremely fast, and it's tied as the fastest ADS times with some of the other sidearms. Now with reloading, we're looking at a reload time of 1.5 seconds, which is the fastest reload time not only to the sidearms, but it is actually the fastest reload time in the entire game. And there's even a magazine attachment that can make this reload even faster, bringing it down to 1.2 seconds. Now, as far as sprint to fire time goes, last video I told you guys I was going to confirm a theory of mine, and in this video I will indeed follow through with that promise. Every weapon in the game actually has the same exact base sprint to fire time of 150 milliseconds. Now, there are attachments that can speed this up, but here we're looking at base numbers. And another theory that I'm confirming on this video is that every weapon does indeed have the same move speed of 6.6 meters per second on a regular speed operator such as Malva. So running with a Glock will not make you faster than running with, say, a sniper rifle. However, I was wrong about one thing. The ADS move speed does actually change from weapon to weapon, or at least it did change from an assault rifle to a sidearm. With the G5 Earl, we've got an ADS move speed of 3.75 meters per second, and that number was the exact same for all of the other sidearms. And finally, for base stats, we've got our magazine capacity, which for the Glock is 11 shots, which is the second highest in the sidearm category, only losing to the tier 4 G7 Springer. Now starting from this episode, we're going to talk very briefly about some of the more niche attachments that are oftentimes not very clear in the description on what they really do. and how they actually change your weapon. First up, we've got the FS True Sight. What I found out about this attachment is that even though it increases damage by 5% beyond the effective range, this does not actually decrease the bullets to kill or TTK at any ranges for a full health enemy. I would instead use the Mealcorn Optics R1 because this sight does actually at least impact the damage more clearly. This sight increases the 3-shot range to 13 meters instead of 12, and it increases the headshot 2-shot range to 23 meters instead of 20, which helps a little bit. Next up, we've got the burst fire attachment. By using the burst fire attachment, this brings the Glock's rounds per minute to 304 instead of 267, which can most definitely make this weapon deadlier. But it does add quite a bit of recoil to it, and it affects hipfire for anyone that might favor it. Personally, I don't use it in PvP as I prefer the recoil accuracy over the TTK boost, which by the way, it decreased time to kill to 167 milliseconds at close range, which is almost 3 times faster if you hit all 3 shots. And lastly, for the niche attachments, let's talk about the reworked holster, which reloads ammo to the primary weapon after a kill. So I've tested this with multiple weapons and it doesn't seem to have a consistent amount of bullets it recovers per weapon. For some weapons, it was recovering over 40% of its ammo back. For some, it got as low as 20%. But mostly, it hovers around recovering about a third of your full clip back, as you can see here in the clip. Now finally, let's move on to my personal favorite go-to builds for both PvP and PvE. Now starting off with my PvE build, I'm using the burst fire mod. Although I really don't enjoy burst fires, this does accelerate damage I do to elite monsters and bosses, making the early stages of expedition a breeze until I find a weapon to use for the rest of the run. Secondly, I'm using the G19 lock. This one in my opinion is the no-brainer attachment, and I use it for both PvP and PvE. This is the overall best attachment for this weapon. It decreases recoil by a lot, and it makes you a lot faster with the Glock in almost every sense. This is like an S tier attachment. And lastly, I'm using the competitor barrel, which improves stability, making recoil even easier to be accurate with. Which this one isn't a no-brainer and can definitely be switched to any other mod you might prefer. I just use it because I like the extra accuracy, and I don't really think this weapon needs a sight, as its iron sight is pretty good. And as for my PvP build, I give the priority to accuracy. The build is almost the exact same. I use the G19 lock, which like I said is like an S tier attachment and is a no-brainer pick. I also use the competitor to make accuracy even easier on top of the G19 lock's recoil improvement. But I do however swap out the burst fire mod. Burst fires for me are usually pretty inconsistent. It messes up my aim and I've never really enjoyed burst fires very much in any game because of that. So I put in the Mealcorn Optics, that's the 1.3 times optics, which again increases the damage range as we mentioned earlier. And those meters really have an impact in PvP. But let's be real, at the end of the day, I would only use this weapon if my primary ran out of bullets and I needed to whip this out. Also, after unlocking the tier 4 sidearm, the Glock has never seen the light of day again in PvP for me, as the tier 4 sidearm is my personal favorite. And that wraps it up for today. Let me know what you guys think about this weapon and what your favorite builds for it are in the comment section below. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, hit the subscribe button. I'm always trying to improve my videos and would love to hear feedback from you guys. So that's it. Peace out, guys.